welcome back, or welcome if you're new. My name is Kira, and today we're going to be going over all of the books that I read in January, and then towards the end I'm going to be finishing up my January reading journal spread. So grab a coffee, a tea, or a treat, and let's get started. So total, I read 8 books in the month of January. I am in the middle of 2 other books, and one of them I'm actually close to finished with, so I wish I could have finished it last night. But unfortunately, my family is starting to come down with whatever is going around right now, maybe a couple of things. So I've been doing nursing stuff and mom things. That's all right though. One of my goals for this year, if you saw my gentle goals plan, that I don't want to get hung up on a number. I just want to thoroughly enjoy my reading. And I had a really great reading month. I did not have any book that was below a 4. I had 2 5 stars, so I found some new authors that I really like, so it was a really great start to the year and I just had a lot of fun. So I'm just gonna dive into them and tell you my thoughts about them. I did review a couple of these when I was doing my reading blog, but I will still talk about them here. So the first book that I started the year off with was The Body in the Bookstore by Ellie Alexander. It is the first book in the Secret Bookcase mystery series. It's about our main character who works in this bookstore in this really small town, and she decides to try and help the bookstore by putting on a mystery festival that eventually takes over the entire town. The whole town gets into it. I loved this story, especially this first book. I loved the main character Annie, and her boss Hal is just like this adorable old man that owns this mansion that he's converted into a library throughout. And each room is themed, and he has like this crazy love of Agatha Christie. So the whole store is just really great. And I loved hearing how the town came together to put this. I loved the festival, and I really want somebody to do this. But they put on like this mystery throughout town that everyone had to solve on top of what was going on here. And I really just loved the investigation that she did. Her friend Priya works at this coffee shop, and she's really wonderful. I loved it from start to finish. I read it really quickly. It's not a huge book, and she's now a new author that I really am excited to read. I'm going to read another series of hers, and the first book is Meet Your Baker, and I'm trying to read it in February, so yes, definitely excited to read it. And I loved that book so much that I just immediately started reading the rest of the series. There is going to be a 5th one coming out in February. I have not read the 4th one. I do actually have it, so I'm trying to get into it, but I paused that and went on to some of my other reads, and I'll tell you why in a second. But the second book that I read in this series is Murder at the Movies, and it follows the same characters in the same town. Because her festival because her festival was so popular, she gets contacted to have this movie premiere in their small town, and so she's starting to become almost like this event planner. And it's a murder mystery movie, and something happens during the premiere. I didn't like it quite as much as the first one, but I still loved how the town came together to put this on. I loved Annie's character. I loved to see she has a little bit of romance going on. She's very smart, but she's very sweet and down to earth and just loves to help people, and just a really fun character to read about. And Priya's still there, so is Hal. I think I gave that one like a 4.25 stars. They're short books, and so I think that it could have done with a little bit more to it, honestly, because it was a little too fast in some areas. But I really enjoyed reading about her and how her character is progressing. And so I went on to the 3rd one, which is Death at a Dinner Party. I gave this one like a 4.25 stars, I think, now that I've sat on it. It's the same sort of situation, that I think that it could have been a little bit longer, but she's putting on this murder mystery themed dinner to help raise money for some of her friends who bought this property, and they're trying to fix it up. And someone gets killed during the dinner. And so this one, I was really excited right at the start because I thought it was going to be one of those locked room murder mysteries, like Who Did It? Yes, it was, but about midway through, instead of her spending the night solving it, like in an Agatha Christie novel or something, they leave and it changes into something else. And I liked the second part of it, the investigation part of it, but I definitely would have enjoyed it more had she done all of the sleuthing herself that evening. But I understand that's not entirely realistic. I just thought it would have been really cool. So it kind of, the pivot a little bit threw me off. But I still loved the characters, and I intend on reading the rest. I did stop with 3, but I do have number 4. It's just about like around Christmas time. And just because of we're getting out of Christmas and moving into something else, it's a little hard for me to get back into reading that. There's a 5th book coming out this month though, and it's about Valentine's Day, and I don't really want to skip anything because in this one you can dive into the different like murder mysteries, but the character development miss certain things that happen. So I'm going to try and read that. It's just hard to like read about Christmas when you're just not in that like vein. I just don't really want to wait until Christmas of 2025 to read it. So we will see. So I did pause on that, and then I went completely in a different direction and started reading an adventure thriller. So I read Sandstorm by James Rollins. I don't have that one in physical copy because it's hard to find in hardcover. I found it in like a paperback the other day, but I want them all to match, so I'm just waiting. But I had not read it before, and it's the first novel in the Sigma Force series, and this was almost a 5 stars for me. It was a really strong start to the series, and I have read some books in the series, but I as I've said before, I'm starting over. So it was nice to see Painter Crow, who's the director of Sigma Force. The whole thing of Sigma Force, if you hadn't heard from me before, is that they are military and they're investigating new science and technology that could be beneficial to the country or hurt the country. But they all are extremely smart. So while they've been in the military, they all have like PhDs in different scientific disciplines, and I just really like that aspect because they get into the science of a lot of things, or there's always something that has happened in history, so they're investigating like archaeological things, and they bring in other characters who are also experts in their field. So I really enjoy that aspect. And I don't want to give too much away about this story, but I really enjoyed the mystery of them finding this artifact, and it was very Indiana Jones at certain points. Just, you know, putting these pieces and puzzles together and finding out. They're trying to find the location to this lost city because there's a technology that they think exists there. And, you know, I can't say too much without giving the plot of the story away, and I don't like doing spoilers. But I really loved when they figured everything out and how it came together. James Rollins does a really great job of weaving in different stories and plot lines and meshing them all together really well. So I was very satisfied with the ending. Loved this, great start, like 4.75 stars. His books are always longer books, and I think they could do with being a little bit shorter sometimes, but otherwise it was a really fun read. So next I did my cozy reading vlog. So if you did watch that, I read a couple of books in there and I got partway through another one. But I did talk about this, and it's Can't Spell Treason Without T by Rebecca Thorne. This was my first 5-star book of the month and the year, and I loved this story so much. It is such a great introduction to cozy fantasy, in my opinion, but it's just, it follows our main characters, Raina and Chianti. Raina was the bodyguard of a queen who is not great, and Chianti is a mage, and she's like a very high up important mage, but Raina decides to run away, and Chianti goes with her to this town called Tawny, which is kind of hidden away, and they start this dream where they're starting a bookstore and tea shop. And I just loved the village, how everyone came together and they were really excited. When they first got there, the town seemed like really rough and tumble and all the people in there, but just watching everyone come together and open up and just be secretly like just really fun community was really great. And how they set up their shop, but also all the other stuff happening because this queen is not happy about her bodyguard leaving her, and Chianti has still some responsibilities when it comes to being a mage. There's dragons attacking the town, so there's a mystery there. So the stakes, because it's a cozy fantasy, aren't extremely high. There's just like a little bit of violence in it, but it's nothing too gory. I just had so much fun with it. Watching their characters evolve and learn, and their relationship is really adorable, and I just had so much fun with it. So much so that I am going to be reading the second book in the series this month, and the other two are coming out not too long afterwards, and they just announced that she's making more. So I definitely am going to be continuing this series. I loved it. So after that, I was reading a couple of books at the same time, but I finished Map of Bones by James Rowlands first, and this is the second book in the Sigma Force series. And it has a new character, which I was more familiar with some of my other reads in this series, and that's Commander Grayson Pierce. So I enjoyed this one a lot. Not quite as much as Sandstorm. Just getting used to a new character again was a little bit different, and I think with Grayson Pierce, it's just over time a lot more character development. Painter Crow's a little bit older and more experienced, so I like him right off the bat. But I think Commander Pierce is actually like a really fun character to follow. And there's other characters in this too that I really enjoyed. James Rowlands does like to weave in some elements of like religious history. And this one actually deals with some relics being stolen, the Vatican's involved. So there's quite a lot of this in that book. And I, again, really liked how it came together. I feel like there's a little bit more violence in this book than the first one, so just like be aware of that. I can't talk about this book in too much detail, these books, without giving anything away. But again, he weaves everything really well together. There is science involved with this, definitely. I feel like this one is a little bit more history focused. So I really enjoyed that. It wasn't quite as long. The only thing that I've noticed now that I've read two back to back is that James Rowlands likes to do a little insta-love when it comes to his main characters, like main male characters. There's not that much development, like they just met. It seemed that part of it seems a little bit unrealistic, and I kind of laugh whenever it comes up. But otherwise, I really still love the books. But I am curious to see what he does with their character development. Because it's an adventure thriller, I don't really want that much romance in it, but I do enjoy when, you know, they have good people behind them, or, you know, like stability and really great like interpersonal relationships, whether it be friendships or, you know, one of them is in a relationship. I just don't really want too much of that, just because that's not what I'm reading it for. Some people might disagree, but I just don't like it that much in my thriller books, but it does give them more, you know, like humanity and personality, in my opinion. So I am going to be reading Black Order in February probably, so that's the third book, so I will give you an update when I do that. So the next book I read, which I was partly reading through my cozy vlog, was Joanne Fluke's Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder. It's the first book in the Hannah Swenson mystery series, which I think has 30 books at this point. So I have been intrigued to read this. Anything that has to do with baking and cookies and like a play on that, I'm just having so much fun with. I think starting the year out with cozy mysteries and cozy fantasies was a really like easy way to get into things. Nothing too, you know, dark or depressing. This month has been a little bit crazy already, so it's really been helping me, and I really enjoyed this one. Our main character, Hannah Swenson, owns a shop where she sells like coffee and cookies, and it's called the Cookie Jar, and she discovers someone that had been murdered, and so she's helping her brother-in-law, who's one of the local police officers, try and figure out what happened. And I really love the description of the town, all of her cookies. There's so many recipes that I think I'm going to try one called the Chocolate Chip Crunch Cookie, maybe today, I don't know. It was really wonderful, and I listened to it and read it at the same time, just kind of back and forth whenever I had time. And it is a thick book though. I gave this like around a 4.25 stars. It was a little too long in some areas for my like for my opinion. I will say that it was hard for me to figure out who did it. I was going back and forth, and there was a lot of twists and turns in there and a lot of characters. It was almost like too many, and she should have cut out a little bit. I feel like it took a long time to get to where it was in the end, and there was just like a lot of extra that she didn't need to put into it, basically. But I do like her characters. She was working with her sister at some points, and their relationship as it developed through the book, though. I have a younger sister. I'm the oldest, the biggest sister of my entire family, so it's fun to watch sister relationships in books, and I really enjoyed that part. And so I am looking forward to reading the second book in the series. It's a Strawberry Shortcake Murder. I will be reading that at some point in the next couple of months for sure. So the last book that I read, which is my second 5 stars of the month, is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. This is one of those books that was hyped up, and so it turned me off from reading for a while, and I am so like bummed that I didn't read it a lot sooner. But I loved this story. In the past, I've talked about how I love folklore, and you know, I'm a nerd when it comes to history. In this world, fairies, and they call them the folk, exist everywhere, and so there's just a lot of people that are studying them. And so she's trying to write an encyclopedia of fairies, which has never been done. So she's been traveling around the world, and now she's going to try and finish her last chapter by going to this really remote area. And she's going there to study ones that she's calling the hidden ones that are supposed to be courtly fae. A lot of stories these days when it comes to fae and like the fair folk, they don't really talk about how in folklore they're really somewhat malevolent. They have these bargains, and you have to be very careful how you say things. And so I really loved how she put that in there. This book has footnotes towards the bottom, like she's you know, writing in an actual academic journal. She talks about stories and the importance of talking to the local community with all these stories that are passed down and how she figures things out. And she's very, you know, like quiet and antisocial a little bit. She doesn't quite grasp all of that, but she starts to really get along with the local village. And in this one, she also has an academic rival named Wendell Brambleby, and he comes just to help her out, and he has a very big crush on her. I can't give too much away, but I absolutely love their dynamic. It's so fun. The first book of the series is a lot of introduction and world building, and it's set in our world, so it's not too different. But the second half of the book really took off. I didn't expect this one to have as much action that it did towards the end, but I absolutely loved it, and I just loved how smart she was and how, you know, they worked together and everything. So lots of twists and turns. I didn't expect really anything that happened, so I loved this story. I just inhaled it. I started it yesterday afternoon just sitting with my kids because we were sick, and I just could not put it down. I finished it so quickly. So I am going to immediately go into the second one, The Map of the Other Lands. I want to see how their relationship develops and more about fairies. Yeah, I just loved this book so much. I'm going to recommend it to a lot of people. So those are the books that I finished. I am about halfway through A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. Love it. I have a feeling it's going to be another 5 stars. I will be finishing it this month. And I have been reading Duel in the Dark, which was my dad's 12 books for 12 friends. So I will be finishing that this month as well, but I just did not get to it. And as for my wrapped book, Covenant by John Everson, I started reading it. I read probably 20% of the book, and I just decided it wasn't for me. It's like my one DNF. I did unhaul it. So as you know, if you watched my goal video, one of my big goals for 2025 is to read down my physical TBR. So at the end of every month when I do this wrap up, I am going to talk about my TBR count. So I started the year off with 389 books on my physical TBR. I went through and counted them, and yeah, that's a lot. But that's all right. We are just reading as much as we can. So I read 6 books off of my physical TBR this month, and the other 2 that I read this month were Kindle books, and they were just books that I needed to get the series started or continue books that I had. But this month I also did a large, for me, book unhaul. So I really I thought I had pared down my shelves, but when I was looking, I was just sitting here looking at my shelves, really figuring out what I wanted to read for February. I just started going through a lot of my shelves because back here is where I keep a lot of like YA, middle grade, and then my romance books. Most of my shelves are fantasy, adventure thriller. I have some sci-fi, cozy fantasy, cozy mysteries. And I used to read more romance than I did. So I was going through and really reading the books and like thinking, am I actually going to read these? So I decided 23 of them I really have no interest in picking up anymore. These were books that I collected a while ago, and almost all of them were YA romance. I'm in my 30s, and it's really hard for me to read any kind of YA romance. I don't think it's a bad genre, it's just not my phase of life anymore, and it's really hard for me to like read about teenagers. It's just kind of weird, and I just can't get into the story. So I unhauled 23, which officially means that my TBR count at the end of the month is 359. So that's not bad, but I'm definitely going to be more selective with books that I get in the future, although trying not to as much this year. So now I'm going to do a little bit of a reading journal update, just my end pages for my January spreads, and also go through my yearly spreads at the beginning and start filling out the monthly stuff. I have waited until the end of the month to fill them out, and it's been really hard just because I want to color them in. So we're going to do it together. So that was my January wrap up. Let me know what you all read, if you've read any of the books that I read and have similar recommendations. I love chatting with people and getting new books for my TBR. So if you like this content, please like and subscribe. I'm still a pretty new channel and I love having new book friends. So I hope you all have a really cozy rest of your weekend and next week, and I will see you all next time. Bye!